You mean to tell me they made a soldering iron smart?
Okay. When you say it that way, it sounds stupid. But yeah, like I updated the firmware on my soldering iron last night.
I want out. I'm done. No, I'm sorry. Actually, I'm being extremely flip here. I could totally see how this would actually be very cool.
It's so freaking cool. Well, okay, so it's nice to have a temperature controlled soldering iron. Like for the first 40 years of my life, I basically had, the $10 Radio Shack one that you plug in. It's always the same temperature and it scorches some stuff and it's not hot enough for other stuff. Mm-hmm. And like there's no precision and it has a big fat chunky point, which is usually fine. And then I got that Hacko, which we talked about on a soldering episode years ago, which is like a temperature controlled, like it's a nice analog soldering station. Maybe it's a digital. I don't know. It's a soldering station. You can control the temperature.
Yeah. If people haven't heard the patron spotlight we did with Twinkle Twinkie on that's largely soldering, not all soldering, but a lot of soldering. That's a great resource to go back to.
So then a few years ago, this company called Pine 64 that makes like open hardware that's collaborative. And I think we should try to have them on the FOSS pod. Maybe it seems like a good fit.
They're the Pine Book people.
They make the Pine Book. They make a bunch of other like kind of hardware widgets for software is what a lot of their stuff lives in. But the Pine Book is a modular laptop.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm on their front page. The image carousel just scrolled a meetup by. I counted at least a couple of graybeards in there.
Look, I'm going to go and tell you it is. Okay. So this thing is like a pencil sized soldering iron that's powered off of USB-C.
Pine sol sized. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Oh God. That's probably why it's named that. I didn't realize that. Anyway, you plug a USB-C port in the back and then you plug that into a battery pack or your USB port on your computer or USB charger or whatever. And it lets you do temperature control. It has stuff like it goes to sleep if you lay it flat on the table and it doesn't move because it has an accelerometer in it. It is so freaking cool.
Ooh, that alone. Because I still have the $10 Radio Shack soldering iron from 10 years ago. And boy, do you have to be careful putting that thing down. I could see something that just prevents careless accidents being pretty nice anyway.
Well, it's still going to be really hot.
Yeah.
So like if you put it down the wrong way, it's going to do bad things to your desk. But like it won't burn forever is the nice thing. So yeah, anyway, it's really freaking cool, man. And it was like $30. I was super stoked.
Dude, I'm on the product page. I don't know that I've ever read a more TechPod product tagline. A RISC-V soldering iron running an open firmware.
Yeah, right.
And like I gather, I think it just runs like user software. Like anybody can write software for it.
You can write plugins for it. It has like a little screen and a couple of buttons. You can change settings. It has it has a little bit of flash memory inside. It's not much. It's not big. It's like 200 kilobytes or something. But it runs Iron OS, which I thought was kind of cool.
Okay.
And it fits standard tips, standard B2 soldering iron tips. So you can just snap them in there. It's really cool. There's a short tip and a long tip.
Apparently the Pine Sol is not even the only soldering iron that Iron OS runs on.
I mean, look, it's part of the Iron OS ecosystem, which is the most metal of software.
I'm seeing like, seriously, I'm seeing like 6 different products on this GitHub repo that this thing runs on.
Yeah, but Pine Sol also, the Pine 64 people also do like single board computers and a bunch of other stuff. Like it's like they're kind of, I feel like they maybe are one of the ones that predated Raspberry Pi, but they build in batches rather than having continuous supply, which kind of continuous supply changes the dynamic a little bit. Yeah,
and honestly, their product line is like amazingly diverse for how kind of grassroots and scrappy this whole thing looks. I mean, they make a phone, they make a smartwatch.
Yeah, I kind of want to try the smartwatch. The smartwatch looks kind of cool.
This is some wild stuff. Look, I mean, okay, as we will see in the episode to come, like maybe the future isn't always great, but sometimes the future is kind of cool.
Welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will.
I'm Brad. Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Hello. I kind of just want to keep talking about your smart soldering iron, but we have a topic here. But man, I need to just close this pine64.org tab right now.
I haven't spent enough time. I just got the soldering iron like 2 days ago, so I've used it. Like I just did a couple of wires together to test it out. But yeah, I'm super stoked about it. I can't wait. I need a project now.
Is it not widely available? I don't see a price on it on here. And when I click go to store, I just see a bunch of accessories for it, but not it.
I got it on Amazon for $30 or $40.
Oh, that's it?
Which, yeah.
Dude, what? Yeah, I might just order one right now.
I mean, I'm going to go and tell you, like having a good soldering iron, if you have not ever had one before, is a life-changing thing. It looks like I paid a $5 premium over their list price. They listed as $25 on the thing, but it's out of stock. So they built it's a batch thing.
Got it.
Like I probably almost certainly paid a premium for it because somebody stocked some and held them. So
that's cool. Last question, and then we will move on. Does running it off USB-C limit the temperatures it can reach?
Yeah, but it works with USB PD, so it can get high.
Okay,
you're not going to have soldering problems because of the lack of power.
Sure.
So if you I plugged it into my Anker, a USB, what is it like a, I don't know, PD1 or whatever, the one that does up to, I plugged into a brick that'll charge a switch and or my laptop and it worked.
Okay. I've got this MacBook Pro charger USB-C sitting here on this desk that is like 90 something watts. I think it'll probably be fine.
You're going to be okay. Yeah, no problems. Brad, what are we talking about this week? What do we got in the hopper?
I'm going to be okay running a soldering iron off this power brick. I don't know if we as a society are going to be okay with the rise of AI.
As long as the power bricks don't come to life.
I think anything is on the table. That might be the theme of this episode, is that it kind of all of a sudden feels like anything might be on the table.
Yeah, it's funny because like we've lived through a couple of computing revolutions at this point, but for whatever reason, this one seems.
I'm sorry. Can I stop you?
Yeah.
Can I guess what you're talking about? Is the integrated circuit the microprocessor one of them, or are we too young for that?
We're too young for that.
Okay. The internet has to be one of them.
The rise of the internet and generalized computing. Yeah.
Are those the two?
No, that's the same one. Like basically if you think about it, the internet is the thing that made everybody want to get a computer.
Oh yeah, of course.
Right. Okay. So we have that, and then also then that becoming mobile and sticking in our pockets is the other one.
Okay.
That was my thought at least.
Okay. Yeah. Those check out. Anyway, yes.
So
I don't know if we're here to argue or on the verge of another sea change, but I think we might be here to suggest that it's possible.
So if you had told me a year ago that we would be taking this seriously, I would probably have said, I don't think so.
Sure.
And the things that have happened in what I'm going to say is the AI field, which is not like, okay, there's some language problems in this whole space that are basically like AI doesn't mean anything anymore because people use it for 50 million different things. Machine learning is going that way. Neural networks are not what we're talking about. Like neural networks are a thing that is used in this, but it's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is a combination of a bunch of different machine learning techniques to create things that are indistinguishable from something that was created by a person.
Sure.
In a lot of cases.
Yes. Yeah. I would add real quick here. To me, I think the language problem is downstream of the money problem, which is to say that all the money in Silicon Valley is now being poured into this. And as soon as that starts happening, then all the language becomes meaningless.
Well, probably we're on the back end of that trend now, would be my guess. Because what happens is everybody makes their bets in an area. So like this happened with VR, this happened with mobile stuff, this happened with apps 20 years ago. People make their, like the big investors make their bets. So your entries in Horowitz's and your whatever,
your
Sequoias, your all of the big capital people will say, okay, we're going to put $1 billion into 10 companies that do 10 different things, or some of them do 10 companies that do the same things because they're fucking mental. But yeah, and then they make them fight, basically. Just to be clear, that's the mental part, is that you invest in 10 competing products that then you all you need is one of them to succeed and you win.
Sure.
Anyway, the point is people put in a buttload of money, like billions upon billions of dollars. The results are starting to show from the first people that were in that space. So, and the interesting thing is, because one of those companies, OpenAI, was founded to do good. Like their charter is interesting in that they say, hey, we're starting this company because we're concerned that the proliferation of AI could be dangerous for humanity. So they're profit limited. They have a open it's like a for profit but profit limited company tied to a and also I don't know what a profit limited company means. Like that's a thing that I think they had to make up for this. So who fucking knows? But they're tied to a research / nonprofit entity as well. Research entity, research lab. So anyway, the upshot is it's really hard to know what's actually going on, but we're starting to see tools that are coming out in these spaces like well before we would have in previous times, because OpenAI is releasing a lot of their stuff for people to just noodle with. So we can see the results, which also benefits them because it gives them more data to feed back into the machines. But we can see the results in a time when normally at this part of the product cycle, none of this stuff would be public. Sure. Right.
Yeah. So I'm looking at their list of products and definitely some heavy hitters on here. Like Dolly is on here, which helped me remember, like it's all a slurry in my memory at this point because stuff's moving so fast and there's so much of it. But like everybody talks about Midjourney and Stable Diffusion now, but wasn't Dolly kind of the first one that made headlines that became a household name in the image generation space?
Dolly was the first one that like produced images that could have been mistaken for something done by a bad artist.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then they are also Chat GPT, which of course is everywhere at the moment.
Yep. Midjourney is one of the other ones. It's one of the other image generators.
Did they do that one too? Oh no,
I'm just saying, like, here are the things that people are talking about now and people are using now.
Yeah, I feel compelled to mention that there are such people as Elon Musk and Peter Thiel also involved in OpenAI. So
yeah, but okay, so yeah, Thiel and Musk and a handful of big value investors put in a couple $1 billion to start this in 2015, I think. Yeah, 2016. And then Microsoft and Amazon have dumped in a buttload of money. Like AWS specifically invested, which makes sense because a lot of the math for this kind of machine learning stuff runs in the cloud. Because you don't want nobody wants to have. It doesn't make sense for people to buy a cluster of 85 cluster GPU boxes just to run this stuff when, in 2 years the hardware is all going to be obsolete. So you just let Amazon eat that cost.
I would like to have that in my backyard. I'm a weirdo that likes to look at the computer that's doing the processing.
I think your power bill is going to disagree.
Yes.
It's just the hard drive problem with NASs, right? Like unless you're really getting use out of the NAS, it doesn't make sense to have a NAS with like 5 hard drives in it because the cost of replacing the hard drives every 3 years.
Yes.
Anyway,
yes, it's just wish fulfillment. Anyway,
yeah. So okay, there's all these companies. There's a ton of money in this space. There's all these companies doing this work. We're starting to see things like GPT, which shows GPT-2 specifically, which is indistinguishable from like shitty blog posts written by people that are bad at writing, all the way up to, I mean, this came up because last night in the Discord, one of our bots has a Chat GPT integration, and
did we know
I turned
about
it off. I turned it off.
Did we know?
Spammy.
Did we
did not know about that?
Okay.
No. It's a new feature. It's a new feature that's been added. The bot does some handful of things for us. It does like role assignments for people.
Yeah, just basic stuff. And then all of a sudden, that's kind of the danger of running external software on your Discord server, right? If they add a feature to that software you didn't anticipate and your users know about it and you don't.
Well, so most of the stuff you can turn off. Like most of the features of that particular bot are turned off. But like I asked it to write a post that says, write a passive aggressive 1,500 word non-apology notice explaining that you're removing a beloved feature named Ask Chat GPT from Me6, which is the bot name, without giving any concrete reasons why. The real reason is spam. And it did a really nice job with it. Like
I have to find this. I'm scrolling frantically trying to find this.
I'll send you the link. But
that's amazing.
I'll read it to you actually if you want.
Okay, sure.
It says, Dear Me6 community, We know how much you have come to love the Ask ChatGPT feature on our platform. We've enjoyed watching you use it to create amazing conversations and share your ideas with each other. Unfortunately, we have made the difficult decision to remove Ask ChatGPT from Me 6. We understand that this will be a disappointment to many of you, and we apologize for any inconvenience this may cause. We understand that this is a beloved feature, and we know that many of you have come to rely on it as part of your daily Me 6 experience. We are sorry to have made this decision, had to have to make this decision, but we feel it is necessary in order to maintain the quality of our platform. We understand that this decision may seem sudden and without explanation. We assure you that we have given this decision a great deal of thought and consideration before making it. We are confident that it is the right decision for the future of Me 6. We understand that this decision may be difficult to accept, and we are sorry for any disappointment or frustration this may cause. We hope that you can understand our decision and continue to enjoy Me 6 as you have in the past. Thank you for your understanding, the Me 6 team.
You know, a little verbose, could have used an editor, maybe redundant in spots, but like kind of totally functional as a shitty, soulless PR managed apology sort of note.
And I told it to do 1,500 words. It did write out 1,500 words.
Okay.
Like I wanted it to be a long apology letter and not a short apology letter, right? Maybe 800 words would have been better. But anyway.
Like kind of almost indistinguishable from a human written version of this that you might see in this context.
It didn't give any real reasons why. It was like, we want to maintain the quality of our platform. That's what you always say when you want to kill something that's expensive or a pain in the ass.
That's exactly what I meant about it being indistinguishable.
Yeah.
It's a lot of words that say basically nothing.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh man.
So anyway, so we wanted to talk about it. Like we want to talk about the quote unquote AI.
Just where things are at. Things feel weird right now in a way that is moving quickly. I think you would agree.
I would say that the path from like DALL-E to Midjourney to Stable Diffusion to Stable Diffusion 2 to whatever's coming next is everything seems to be accelerating in a way that is like singularity-ish almost. It's unsettling.
Yeah, it is for sure. I mean, that's a big word to throw around.
Well, I mean, the point, the bog standard definition of the singularity from Kurzweil 30, 40 years ago, whenever we wrote the book, is, hey, it's the time at which you can't predict anything else. What comes beyond?
Yeah.
You know, the Quetzalcoatl Haderach, Brad.
Sure. Yes. And I assume he was speaking in much broader terms than AI, right? Or was he talking?
No, he was specifically talking about AI. He was talking about AI as like a driver for change that makes change accelerate to the point that it's impossible to predict what comes next.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, that concept obviously could apply to energy production or genetic manipulation or any number of other radical.
Specifically, it was about machines becoming smarter than people and being able to make themselves smarter.
Sure. I mean,
so that at which point our brains become the second tier brains on the planet and maybe the universe, who knows? And then things go bad.
I saw the Terminator. I know how this goes.
Dun 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 dun.
Yeah. So anyway, things are unpredictable.
The robots aren't coming, Brad. That's the thing to know. The robots, look, we can still. Like there was a great thread on Twitter or Mastodon or something a few months ago from a roboticist who was like, okay, you don't have to worry about killer robot. Like killer robots aren't going to be bipedal walking around with machine guns. There'll be cars and drones that depth charge you and stuff like that. If you have a robot walking at you, all you do is get some dust, some Fuller's dust, and just throw it at it. It'll clog up the joints to the point that it seizes up. You know,
chaff is always the way.
Yeah, keep your dust on hand. Anyway, okay, so the point of this whole episode is we want to talk about what the stuff actually does as much as we can know, because some of it happens internally. I mean, Stable Diffusion's open, so you can look at it. A lot of the open AI stuff is actually open, although I think they're a little weird about releasing source code for stuff, it seems like. This isn't generalized AI, right? Like these products, Midjourney and DALL-E and Stable Diffusion and GPT and whatever comes next. We haven't talked about the audio stuff, the ones that you feed your voice into and 2 minutes of voice and it generates a voice generator that sounds kind of like you, but not exactly.
Yeah.
They're not, they don't have understanding.
I mean, I hope not. Like, if we have inadvertently created sentient programs and nobody is talking about it, we are in trouble.
Nope, we're not there yet.
No.
That guy at Google said that a couple years ago and then was roundly debunked and also I think sacked.
I think he was fired. I mean, I think he was like violating some.
He broke
some employment, some secrecy clause.
Yeah. Anyway, but
and like also like, you know, there are all these intermediate steps on the way to a truly self-aware theoretical AI, Turing test and stuff like that.
Well,
we might be there. Actually, we might be getting really close to things satisfying the Turing test as a matter of course.
But I mean, the thing that's happening. Okay, so the thing that's happening when you say, "Hey, I want to see pictures of pizza," draw me a picture of pizza to Midjourney or to.
I'm always saying that I want. Okay.
Yeah, my understanding is that you're more bread than pizza, but whatever. When you say, "Hey, I want to see pizza," it's not the machine doesn't know. Oh, okay, Brad likes pizza here, and it doesn't conceptually understand what a pizza is. It knows that pizza is used with words like dough and sauce and cheese and pepperoni, and it knows that there's a specific there's a structure to images that are used in conjunction with the word pizza. I
assume it's just literally associating colors and shapes and that sort of thing.
I mean, it's more complicated than that.
Probably. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more detail and category of information, but yes.
Yeah, it knows that it knows that certain things go together and some things go together better than others. And there's some games that are like this where you can put a word in and you have to I can't remember what it's called. You put a word in and your goal is to guess a word, and it tries to use semantic analysis of the word that you put in and the word that it's trying to get you to, and it tells you how close your word is. So like the word might be water, and if you put ocean, that would be very close because an ocean is made of water. But if you put a person, that would also be close because people are also made of water. And if you put a rock, that's going to be probably a lot further away.
I saw there was a TikTok going around this morning of using your head to amplify the radio signal out of your old car key fob because your head is full of water and the water acts as an amplifier.
That doesn't sound good.
No. I mean, they did mention you could also use a full water bottle. Point being, people have a lot of water in them. Anyway,
I didn't know you were on TikTok. Also, we gotta have a conversation about this.
I view TikTok by way of Twitter.
Okay.
You know what? Oh, boy, complete tangent here. Is that a minor sign of the impending death of Twitter that a lot of Twitter content is just reposting TikToks these days?
Look,
a lot of it.
The Twitter situation, turning off the on a related note, hey, PSA, if you have ever used Twitter to sign in for a website that you find have information that is useful or valuable to you on it, go to that website and put your email address into it and then hit the forgot password button so you can associate that Twitter account with your email address, because it's going to stop working on February 8th at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because Twitter's full of numpties.
By the time you hear this,
you have like 4 days.
Like 4 days, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I did not mean to derail.
No, it's okay. But the whole point is the machines don't understand things. They aren't sentient, right? They just know the relationship between everything to everything else, which, I mean, maybe that's what sentience is. Who knows?
I mean, well, boy, we do not need to get into like philosophy of consciousness stuff here, but like self-awareness and ambition and some kind of emotional state, I feel like, are some of the requisites anyway.
Yeah, there's no as far as we know, the internal monologue is just about what's connected to everything else.
Yeah. Can we just start here and define some terms, or like, I mean, maybe try to like unpack a little bit of the investment driven jargon.
Yeah.
Like AI is kind of the term that is generally the buzzword these days. Like, is it pretty much 100% of the quote unquote AI in use now machine learning driven?
Well, I mean, it's same. They're like that. They're used. Both of those words have been the same thing, and both of them can mean anything that people want them to mean.
So that's the problem, and that's what I'm trying to get at here.
Machine. I would say that the people who talk about machine learning generally are the people, like when somebody says, "Hey, I have a new AI," then you kind of go, "Oh, okay, whatever."
Right.
The people who know what they're talking about generally talk about machine learning, or they talk about specific types of machine learning, like GANs and stuff like that.
Okay. And I like a kind of related question is, I was going to ask, is there another better term than the kind of singular AI, as in an AI, like machine learning is an abstract concept, but what do you call the result of machine learning? A model?
Yeah.
A network?
Models are built.
Is that
machine learning models are built using these different techniques. Right. And like, I don't, again, this is one of those situations where everybody calls stuff different things, so
Yeah.
it's hard to know.
Right.
I mean, I've always used machine learning for this, and most of this people I've known that work in these spaces that are serious, you describe things as machine learning, with AI as the thing that they talk about on the nightly news, being not a term of art, I guess.
Mhm.
But I don't have a strong sense of that.
Yeah, it's just with AI both being an extreme business buzzword at the moment, and also this decades long legacy in science fiction, it's a little bit, it's got a lot of baggage.
I think we have to just move. I think we have to just not think about that too much.
No, I agree. It's just an attempt to understand what is actually tangibly going on under the hood.
Yeah, it's I mean, this always happens, right? Because we didn't remember smartphones. We didn't know what to call smartphones for a while. People were trying to call them other things, and the names will settle out in time. Eventually, the machines will just tell us what to call themselves. Hi, I'm Steve.
It's true.
Yeah. So how does this stuff work? That's the upshot is they take a large data set, a massive amount of data, called a corpus, which is it's structured data. So it's pictures of pizza that are labeled pizza. And they also have a bunch of other tags on them. They'll say cooked, with sauce, all the descriptors that you could think of that would go with that picture of pizza, right? They'll have straight on shots. They'll have off axis. They'll have slices. They'll have whole pies. They'll have the box. They'll have not in the box. They'll have the little tables that are in there to keep the box from smashing into the pizza. They'll have pizzerias. They'll have delivery guys. They'll have the bags that the delivery comes in. They'll all be labeled and tagged with all the descriptors you could possibly imagine.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the stuff was happening, it seems with your CAPTCHAs over the years, as you were clicking pictures of bicycles and sunflowers and goats and
interesting
and all those things. But the point is, it's all structured and it's known good, right? So you run these neural networks on these corpuses, and they build connections between them that are faster and more accessible than a traditional database lookup, and also kind of more arbitrary. So they're not predictable, right? The stuff that it latches onto, basically at this point they're running, well, at least in the old days, I don't know what the people inside OpenAI and Stable Diffusion and stuff are doing, but they would run artificial neural networks that mimic the way neurons create paths, where you put in the data set on one side and you see what comes out the other side, and you infer what's happening on the inside of the neural network from what goes in and comes out, what comes out when it goes in. And just to be clear, this isn't new. This part isn't new. Google Photos has been doing this on photos you upload to their service for years. Apple does the same thing with photos that you keep in your Apple Photos account. I think Apple does it locally and Google does it in the cloud. But the upshot is, the upshot is the same, is that I can type dog into Google Photos and it gives me all the pictures of dogs that I've uploaded to Google Photos in the last 10 years.
Yeah. Honestly, I mean, I maybe grain of salt on this, but Googling around, I landed on, for example, an article on that IBM posted saying hey, a lot of modern machine learning has its roots in research that was done by IBM in the 60s. And of course they might want to lay claim to some of this, but the point is they made it seem the concept for this stuff does go back quite a ways. I was going to ask if stuff like Deep Blue, for example, in the 90s, did that work on a reduced or primitive version of the same concept?
Almost certainly not. I mean, it was just database lookups.
That was okay. Studying chess moves in that context.
And Deep Blue might have actually done it the other way, where it just projected forward. I don't know if it had. I don't know how that stuff worked. I did my senior thesis when I was in 1998, 97. In the biochemistry department, I did my senior thesis about neural networks, because at that point we were building biological networks out of actual neurons and modeling how they were extracted. Seeing if we could model them in computers. We didn't have anywhere near the compute necessary to do that, but you could see a future where it happened. I just thought it would take a lot longer than it did. I mean, I guess it took 20 years, which seems about right. So, But we used some basic machine learning stuff at Foo to do to do the animation. So we were using a push pull kind of setup for the animation, where the IK would push the limbs in one direction, and then we trained a corpus of data on actual movements that used a GAN to GAN is a generative
adversarial network.
Adversarial network, yeah. That basically tried to pull the IK data back to the mean, so it prevented things like weird chicken arms and unpredictable behaviors from happening.
When you said compared to actual movements, like what form did that take? Was it video of human beings, or
we bought a giant set of data of IK data that was captured?
Oh, okay, so it was just
people moving. Yeah, it was just people
pure motion capture data.
Well, it was vector data. I think I can't remember, but it was basically like somebody in a motion capture suit doing all of the limits of their human movement for X period of time. And it was like 18 hours of that or something. It was some ridiculous. It was a giant amount of data. And that let us do something. So the benefit of this stuff is that the neural networks, even simulated and just running on like TensorFlow cores on your GPU or in your CPU or whatever, are able to do this math, these lookups way, way, way faster than you could in like a normal. Like if you put all this stuff in a normal SQL database and search for pizza, you're not going to get the kind of weight and accuracy that you get by doing the trained neural network with the machine learning models. So then how does that lookup turn into a drawing of a pizza in Midjourney or something like that, right? You put in your words, it parses the words to find what it thinks they mean, right? And then it's like, okay, here are all of the pictures that we have that mean these words, right? So you say, I want to draw a picture of a pepperoni pizza and I want it to look like a Looney Tunes cartoon, and I want Wile E. Coyote to be holding the pizza, and I want Big Bird to be taking a slice from the box. And it knows these are what Big Bird looks like. Here's the Big Bird taking something. Here's what a pepperoni pizza looks like. Here's what a pepperoni pizza looks like when it's in a box. Here's the Looney Tunes. Is this all flat shaded? These pictures all have these same characteristics. There's always edges. There's hard edges. They're flat shaded. They're blah, 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 limited palette, blah, blah, blah. And then it takes 15 all those different elements and kind of blurs the edges between them and smashes them together on one picture.
Okay, that might answer a question I was about to ask and have wondered for quite a while about these generated images. Like what is the most irreducible component of the image that comes out of these things? Like, is it building literally pixel by pixel, or this is kind of undefinable because you don't know what images are being used in the result necessarily, but is it actual like visible chunks of whole images that are being smashed together with image processing, or is it literally is it generating images from whole cloth? Or
so you get what I'm asking? It's generating. It understands the characteristics of images.
Okay.
So like when you say draw a goat that looks like a Lisa Frank painting, it knows what a Lisa Frank painting, like it knows what the characteristics of a Lisa Frank painting or a Salvador Dali or whatever are, right? And it knows what a goat looks like, and it knows how to apply. It can apply those. You can create a goat picture out of whole cloth that looks like a Lisa Frank painting, even though Lisa Frank never painted a goat.
Got it. So there are not necessarily identifiable bits of existing images in the result.
Sometimes people definitely found them.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw something floating around last night. I should have clicked in and read more about it. That there's an issue with some of the models, quote unquote, memorizing certain images that it was trained on. Like the specific example given was part of the model was a photo of a specific living one, not an AI, like an actual woman who was alive with a name. And then they requested a picture of that woman from the model, and it spit out basically the exact same image that was fed to it. And in that case, like that's not an original image at all.
Well, none of these are original images. These are all so the thing that I've found, so I installed I've had Stable Diffusion on my computer just to kind of noodle because I like to poke at stuff and I needed to test a really overpowered GPU. And the thing I found is that the more pictures there are of things, the more likely you are to get an actionable good result out of them. For example, if you type Mickey Mouse into Stable Diffusion, Mickey Mouse, there's a lot of pictures of Mickey Mouse out in the world. You get something that looks exactly like art created by Disney to promote Mickey Mouse, except it can't do hands. Hands are really hard.
Hands and teeth seem like the things.
Yeah. Wow. There's always way too many or not enough, or like sometimes there's just like one really wide tooth. That's disturbing. Yeah.
That hand is coming right out of Mickey Mouse's shoulder.
Yeah, and it also has the wrong number of fingers, and the thumb is where the index finger should be.
And also there's something on the tongue that could be shading, or it could be a tooth coming out of the tongue. I'm not sure.
But the Mickey Mouse head, pretty. Oh, that's a shine. I would say that's a shine on the tongue.
Yeah, I think so.
This just so you know, the prompt of this was Mickey Mouse human photo reel. Didn't get the human or the photo reel part, but the Mickey Mouse head is pretty solid. So like when you do pictures of things, when you ask for like a celebrity, somebody that has a lot of photos, or I asked for Will Smith slapping Chris Rock because I thought that would be funny. And I got the amalgam of all the news blog pictures where they put like a separate picture of Will Smith and Chris Rock facing each other, looking like they're both yelling.
Interesting. Yeah, like it's literally divided down the middle, just like it would be in one of those kind of faceless clickbait news sites.
Yeah. Like when you ask for like Mars bases or moon bases, if you don't give specific constraints, like if you want like 70s, if you wanted like a 70s pastel of a space station, like the kind that NASA used to commission of the rotating space stations, like you have to really constrain the more specific things so it understands what you're asking for. Yeah. And like anything else, the more specific you are when you're writing the query, the better you get. You also can drill down on specific axes. Like if you like, I'm trying to think of an example here, but like I was trying to get Homer Simpson, but with real human skin. And it turned out to be really hard because there's a lot of pictures of Homer Simpson as a cartoon and no pictures of people that look like Homer Simpson that are tagged as Homer Simpson. So it didn't know, like it knows what to do with the line art. It doesn't know what to do with a 3D. It doesn't know how to put skin on a 2D representation of a 3D person, if that makes sense.
Everything you just said sounds horrifying.
It's not good. Not good.
Like if you set out to make images that explicitly are horrifying as a goal, you can come up with some extremely disturbing stuff.
You should check out my Tumblr.
I might be good. I did want to ask real quick. So you've got a pretty beefy PC. You're like what, a 13900K and a 4090?
Yeah.
How long does it take on that beefy hardware to put in a request to give it a prompt and get something out?
Depends on the resolution you ask for. Okay. If you're looking for like these images, I think are 512 by 512. That takes like 30, 45 seconds to generate a few.
Okay, sure.
It generally, for whatever reason, I don't understand why this works, but for whatever reason, when you start it, if you let it, like if you do 4 images off the same query, it generates the last 3 much faster than the first one. So I assume there's some magic happening there that then is repeatable, and it just pulls off like one of the ways to think about this is that you're building a 3-dimensional map through this database, or maybe it's a 10-dimensional map through this database, right? So you're taking different branching paths at each node, and it's not just a normal 3-dimensional space. It's like as many dimensions as there are tags off of each node. So like you go in, like if you're looking at pizza, there's a whole other dimensions of the data at dough, crust, sauce, cheese, pepperoni, Italian, Detroit, Sicilian, like all the different things you get, recipe. Like there's different nodes on all of those things.
Checkered tablecloth.
Yeah, and once it's found that spot in the database, you can it can in the model, it can go back. So the other thing to say about this is creating the models is like creating the images really computationally expensive. Creating the models that create the images is offensively computationally expensive. Like it is stupid expensive to make those models, to the point that like NVIDIA has a whole cluster of machines that they use to generate the DLSS models. And you know, they run for weeks and weeks and weeks and are constantly updating them and things like that. So there's a real, even like the total cost of the compute for these machine learning things isn't just like the energy that comes out of the wall and goes into your computer when you run against Stable Diffusion. It's also the cost of them building that model at Stable Diffusion, which is, you know, an enormous amount of energy and thus carbon, depending on where they're buying their electricity from.
There's a lot.
It's a lot.
A lot of externalities, a lot of factors to keep up with. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, and like there's a lot even before you get into the, hey, this is like, it's controversial for a lot of reasons, for a lot of good reasons, just to be clear. Like they're taking art that has questionable license to at best.
Yeah. I mean, to be clear, like we were just talking about, there's a lot on just the pure technical end of implementation, but the ethical component of how this affects society is a broad topic, let's say.
Well, and I mean, yeah. So like artists understandably are pissed, right? Because if you're an artist and you type in draw a ladybug and then your name and you get a picture that looks like you could have drawn it, that's not great.
No.
For a lot of reasons. I think the writers are less concerned, but I mean, we've already seen like CNET, your former employers at Red Ventures, replaced the CNET writers with AI and then started posting a bunch of wildly inaccurate news stories as a result. Brad's being quiet now. Sorry, Brad. Yeah, like there's concerns about replacing people's jobs. We as a society have done that multiple times in the past and it's worked out to date, but it seems like the jobs that are getting fewer and fewer.
Yeah. I mean, I'm repeating verbatim something I just said on the Patreon episode the other day, but like, yes, it has worked out in a broad historical sense, but I also worry that history has kind of forgotten a lot of the people who got left behind along the way. Like it's easy to look back at, I think you used the example of the cotton gin, right? Or, I mean, the Industrial Revolution is rife with this stuff, right? But like, it's easy now to look back and say like, oh, new jobs emerged and people found new lines of work. But like in the moment when it happened, like people who were not capable of finding new work
wasn't great for a lot of people.
Might disagree with you, but like we have no visibility into that. I mean, I'm sure historical work has been done that we could look up, but you know what I mean? Like it's easy to gloss over, I think, the human cost at the time when we are decades or centuries hence and can say like, oh, everything's fine now.
Yeah. I mean, I think also, you know, the Industrial Revolution gave rise to the modern labor movement, right? Which is, I mean, it took a while.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the concern I have is that these technologies consolidate more of the power of labor in fewer hands, right? It's the general critique of the tech industry in general, right? Is that when we're talking about car manufacturing, that's consolidating, you know, there's a lot of labor spread out over a lot of places to make one car. And when we talk about Google, it's a lot less labor that generates a lot more capital, thus consolidating both the labor and the capital in smaller places. And like the outcomes from that have been often bad so far. So anyway, I don't know. I'm not a labor theorist, so we should have Austin on to talk about this sometime.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then there's a whole bunch of other ethical considerations around, like you can use this, you can train Stable Diffusion on a set of your own photos. So if you want to make photos of somebody that you know, or so photos of a famous person against their without their consent, that put them doing things that they wouldn't want to be seen doing, is really easy to do that. Like it is not like, hey, you have to be really good at Photoshop now to make something that looks like a good Photoshop. It's that, hey, you take 10 pictures of somebody and put them into Stable Diffusion and then put the picture you want them to look like they're in, and you can make whatever you want out of that.
Yeah.
And it's profoundly bad.
But that is another long-term concern. I mean, we're nowhere near there yet. There's plenty of uncanny valley left to traverse here, but like the potential to further poison the information environment is also pretty alarming, say 20 years down the line or something, if you're able to, you know, right now, like you said, right now, it takes a ton of work and iteration and processing just to spit an image out that's usable. It's going to be a long time before you can just request a realistic video of a politician doing something awful or whatever. but it doesn't seem like it will stay that way forever.
As long as you don't show their hands, it's not going to be that hard.
Yeah.
The data cleanliness thing, the sanitation of the data is another interesting place, because like these tools are widespread. The images aren't particularly well fingerprinted at this point. I mean, they're starting to be, but there's a whole bunch of stuff out there that wasn't up until this point. And like the analogy that people are using is the value of pre-World War II steel. So if you want to do any work with a metal box, if you want to make a machine that tests radiation at a low level, you got to build a box that's made out of steel that was smelted before the first nuclear bomb was blown up in Hiroshima.
Go on. Did you
not know this?
This sounds fascinating. No.
Oh yeah. So like Geiger counters and research stuff all is built with metal that was smelted before the Hiroshima bomb blew up. Okay. Because as soon as that happened, there's radioactive particulate in the air that's just part of the increased background radiation of our world.
Oh, wow.
Means that post Hiroshima steel is more radioactive. So there's going to be more signal, and less, you can't get as clean a signal out of that.
Huh.
So people literally go around and salvage World War I ships sunk during World War I for the steel to then make scientific equipment and stuff out of.
Wow, I have no idea. I mean, I don't know what the half-life is of this particular type of radiation or radioactive.
200,000 years.
I was gonna say it's probably not something we can just.
Long.
It's probably not something we can just wait out to get more usable steel back anyway.
But the point is, we're doing the same thing right now with all the data on the internet. Up until this point, like up until 5 years ago, we had clean data about what we could assume that everything that was on the internet was probably made by people, right? Which is what all these companies have done to make the models that they built their corpuses out of this data. The downside to the thing now is everybody's just posting the pictures they're making Stable Diffusion and whatever on their desktop computers. Some of that stuff's fingerprinted. Some of the text stuff is fingerprinted, but for the most part, a lot of especially the early stuff is completely unlabeled in a way that like we're going to start poisoning the corpuses of the future machine learnings, and that's going to have unpredictable effects.
Oh God.
Because it's like running JPEG. It's like running JPEGs through a bunch of compression loops, right?
Oh no.
So like the big question I have is, with the way all this stuff works, are we just reverting to mean, right? Is everything that we're training these machines on, like are how much work are they doing to not revert to mean? Oh God, there's even more ethical stuff. Like there's an infinity of ethical stuff here. But are it's the reversion to mean question is, are we, when you put in attractive woman into especially some DALL-E, some of the early machine learning models, you just get a white person who projects female with North American, who adheres to North American beauty standards.
Right. Okay. I was gonna ask you to define what mean in particular you were talking about.
Average in this case,
reverting to, but that makes it pretty clear.
Yeah, which is not, just to be clear, a white woman who lives on the East Coast in New York in the United States is not the worldwide attractive mean for attractiveness, is my understanding.
That's what I meant about defining the mean here. Right? Yes.
Yeah. But those are the people that the most pictures have been taken of them, and probably have posted the most pictures on Instagram or wherever else they stole the pictures from. So here we have it.
I mean, what you're really talking about is the AI just modeling existing human biases and proclivities.
Well, the AI specifically models the data that it's given.
Right.
So if you take your corpus if you build your corpus from Instagram, which is predominantly used in the West, you're going to get a different result than if you take it from WeChat, which is used in the East.
Right. I mean, this is
China specifically, I guess.
Correct me if I'm wrong. What was the Microsoft? Was it Tay?
No, the Nazi one?
The Microsoft's Nazi bot.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's happening now with GPT, right? Like
that's a title for a podcast if I've ever heard one.
Well, the GPT stuff, people are using the Ask GPT feature that we talked about earlier in this episode to get around, because it's not subject to spam filter because it comes through the bot that it's a moderator.
Right.
And as a result, they were using that to post Nazi shit in Discords that have that bot turned on. We don't have that problem, just to be clear.
That's what I was getting at with Tay, right? There was no constraint or filtering on what they were allowing to enter into its model, right?
Yeah. And to be clear, the people that I've followed on Twitter that have been talking about this stuff for 20 years were like, yeah, you can't post an unrestrained chat bot on the internet because it's going to be a Nazi in about 5 minutes. And it turns out they were right. It took 90 minutes, I think, if I remember right. But anyway, it's the whole thing is really complicated. The what is the, is this going to result in just mass homogenization of all of the whatever you feed into it is one of my big questions. And it seems like that's one of the reasons I'm not as worried about it actually is that, you know, if you can generate stuff, art, words, whatever, out of the corpus of human creativity up until this point, then all of a sudden the people that can make stuff that live outside of that space and that are novel are going to be even more valuable than they were before. Right.
Sure.
Now, is it possible to beat the brunt of, you know, does anybody ever invent anything new? Does anybody ever make new art? Is every drawing that's ever been done made before? Yes, probably. I don't know.
Every story was told centuries ago.
Yeah, there's only 7 stories anyway. So it's weird. There's a bunch of companies like I'm profoundly uncomfortable with companies that involve Peter Thiel and Elon Musk having say in this type of thing. Musk is no longer on the board of OpenAI for what it's worth.
Really? Interesting.
He went away. He's still an investor, but he's no longer a part of the decision-making process there. The interesting thing about this whole thing is now that we know that he's kind of a dope, reading the quotes about the foundation of OpenAI that were written by him, I'm reading them now in the context of maybe he watched Terminator the night before.
It's entirely possible.
So they asked him for this.
Hey, look, glass of red wine, some Ambien, magic.
Got real jacked up on mushrooms and watched Terminator. I was like, fuck, man, we got to do something about the AI. There's a bunch of other companies involved too. There's a bunch of people that are not posting all their stuff. I mean, OpenAI posting DALL-E and ChatGPT and all that stuff is good because it does let people see what's actually going on and let people understand and let this be a gradual transition rather than something terrifying where the machines just start telling us what to do. But there's also a ton of companies that have taken as much or more money that are doing this stuff quietly without publicizing what they're working on.
Right. Like, I mean, it's the thing, right? Like it's the thing you have to have now, right? Like I assume in the kind of like Valley groupthink, it's like if you don't have an AI strategy, you're nothing, right? I'm guessing. But I assume that is the notion in the investor class at this point.
But they, like I said, they probably are already made their bets at this point. Well, or most of them. They probably have a little bit of money squirreled away. But now we're in the Gartner hype cycle, right? Where there's a huge round of investment and then nothing really comes of it. Like we'll see stuff out of this first round. Now the real test of how screwed we are is, does the hype cycle accelerate? Because usually the hype cycle is like a 5-year thing, right? Like people get excited about it. There's a huge round of investment. Nothing happens for a long time. People get really down on it and everybody starts really talking smack about this. Like if you think about smartphones, this period is like 2007, 2005 to 2010, right? And then the iPhone 4 comes out and all of a sudden you look around and everybody has an iPhone, at least in San Francisco. Normal places, it took a couple more years. If they accelerate that process from the normal like 2 to 5 years, you know, VR is 10 years in almost, and we're still not through the trough of despair. Is what the sad place is where the investment isn't paying off yet. If they accelerate that trough, they accelerate through that trough, all bets are off. Because people will spend more money, and when that happens, it's like who fucking knows what's going to happen next?
Yeah. Yes, I think that is the gist or the theme of this whole thing is who fucking knows what's going to happen next. There was one distinction I wanted to make. Like when we talk about in the whims of investors here, I think you're primarily talking about venture capitalists who are funding new ventures, right?
Yeah,
but there's another component of that, which is the investors as a block of massive existing public companies that influence the actions of those companies by way of the board of directors, I assume is generally how that works. But like the point I'm making is like investors are going to want to demand to know like what is Microsoft's AI strategy? What is Google's like Mass
so Microsoft's put like 10 or $15 billion into OpenAI
Right.
and some other companies.
And like I'm asking this in the wake of like these mass layoffs that have just occurred already, which make it very evident that like the people who hold the money and the capital in this arrangement are quite willing to slash and burn the second it is useful or beneficial or even feels beneficial. The point I'm making is like, again, like mass disruption to the workforce is the thing that probably concerns me the most here. And like that's what I'm getting at is just like there could be this groundswell of like, hey, what are you doing with AI? More to the point, how are you going to start cutting jobs and replacing it with AI?
Well, yeah, and I think that's the big question. I think that's one of the big questions. I also there's like big outstanding copyright questions. I really do think that we're going to see some copyright lawsuits against these companies.
Those are brewing. I've seen talk about class actions coalescing among artists who were able to prove that their work was used to train existing models.
Yeah, and I think we'll see some rules around disclosure, something like that. The problem with this is it's also early, and the markets like nobody's making money on it really to speak of yet. So there's not damages to be claimed, which means the copyright stuff will be kind of hold until that happens. The legislation side of it's the other thing too, because like Congress is going to fuck this up really bad for a long time.
Like even a normal Congress would probably not get it right, let alone the farce that is taking place now.
Well, the push pull on, hey, we don't want to fall behind other countries in this space, which is clearly important for the future, versus, hey, Hollywood wants us to protect their profits. The copyright arm wants us to protect the profits of Hollywood. Like the first time you can get a new Spider-Man, well, actually, we're there. You can watch Me Forever on Twitch right now and watch endless low poly Seinfeld.
Yes,
on Twitch.
Yes, that's exactly what that is. Runs in Unity. If you haven't seen it, the Twitch channel, Watch Me Forever.
Yeah,
we only know.
It's a show about nothing.
I think we only know it runs in Unity because they had to restart it on stream at one point.
Oh, really?
Yes.
But it's a generated TV show. Like the characters talk. The characters create dialogue. The dialogue is created by the machine. The characters act it, perform it. The shots are made. They change sets occasionally. There doesn't seem to be any plot at all long term, but there's like a series of scenes with jokes, and then normal TV show punchlines and laugh track at the end.
Yes. Well, attempts at normal TV show punchlines. I wouldn't say many of them are successful or even comprehensible, but
they don't use the punchlines correctly, but they often use the punchlines that you've heard. Like, it wouldn't surprise me to hear somebody say bazinga on this at some point.
God. Sure. Yes.
Right. Like it's a real weird thing. But my point is, when Congress is going to have to decide whether they want to invest in the future, whether they want to support the future, which is going to involve like finally fucking up the copyright rules that have frankly caused some problems for us as a culture over the last 100 years, or giving up on AI and letting Europe and China lead instead, which I don't think they're going to do.
Right. In a more robust regulatory environment, I would have not as many concerns about this, but
but at the same time, it's a scary thing because if like you don't want to be the third one to the AI party.
Yeah, fair.
Because if they started okay, here's the other side of it. This is we're like into the 10th dimension here. I apologize. We're all over the place with this episode, but there's a lot. The GPT-2 stuff. You don't like, I used it to generate a blog post on shitty.blog. Shout out to Shitty Blog. I posted a tomato soup recipe and somebody was like, hey, I wish I don't read recipes on the internet unless they have a really long meandering story at the start about how important tomato soup is to you as a person.
Uh-huh.
So I put into the GPT-2 stuff. The prompt was generate a long meandering blog post long and meandering introduction full of questionable history and moderately amusing anecdotes for people who like food blogs, courtesy of ChatGPT. And it wrote 1,000-word thing about like the history of tomato soup, told a story about an amusing anecdote about the first time I had great tomato soup as a kid and how the other kids made fun of me for that.
Tomato soup has a rich history that dates back to the 18th century. It was first created as a way to preserve tomatoes, which were not yet considered a food item and were mostly used for decoration.
No idea if that's
funny.
true. I have no idea if any of this is true. Anyway, so it talks about grilled cheese being an important pairing for tomato soup. It talks about the use of pesticides and genetically modified seeds in the farming industry. Mm-hmm. I couldn't tell the difference between this and something that like a normal human wrote on some shitty recipe blog where they were ripping off recipes from other sites.
Right. Except for the factual basis of all of this is like pretty clearly not sound.
I don't know if it is or not. It could be 100% true.
I have to assume people considered tomatoes food earlier than the 18th century.
I mean, I could go to Wikipedia and find out it's an edible berry.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Like kind of, is husbandry the right term for agricultural?
Botany.
I don't know what kind of
horticulture.
Yeah, the horticulture, the manipulation of crops successively. I don't know what the term is there, but I don't know when maybe the tomato came about much later than I thought.
Yeah,
I had to assume.
I'm on the Wikipedia page right now. 500 BC. See, it's wrong.
Okay. Yes, I kind of assumed.
Tomatoes were not grown in England until the 1590s. See, it's complete horse shit. Right. This is the thing. You can't, but it's good enough. You can't tell.
Uh-huh.
So yeah. Anyway.
I think like another random example that comes to mind. I don't know for a fact they used machine learning for this, but I have to assume the middleware they used for Darth Vader's voice in the Obi-Wan series was very famously generated.
Oh yeah, that was absolutely machine learning. They fed in a bunch of James Earl Jones Darth Vader voices and 100%.
And
that's there's so many companies working on that, and like we have friends who do that. It's hard.
Oh, well,
but it's a solved problem at this point, basically.
My understanding, and it's proprietary, so they didn't get a lot into the technology that I've seen. I would love to know more about it. I believe that was like kind of run against actual voiceover. It might have been James Earl Jones doing acting that they then applied a kind of younger sounding model to, or it may have been another actor. I don't think they've said, but my sense was this was kind of a vocal marionette situation of somebody was saying the lines and then they made the Darth Vader voice say those same lines in the same way. And it was shockingly convincing. Like, I don't think it was acted exactly the way that it would have, intonation, dramatic flair, maybe not quite the same as 1977 or whatever, but like the tone and the pitch of the voice, the resonance of it, shockingly convincing.
So there's two ways that people do that. The one is that they record another actor and then they run the filter through it to make it sound like the new one. The other is it uses this thing called, I think it's voice ML or something like that, or speech ML, which is a markup language that basically you write a script and then you write the inflections that you want to have using markup language at different parts of the script. The tools for that stuff are really bad right now. There's opportunities there probably. But anyway, I have no doubt that was a machine learning thing because there's enough James Earl Jones from 1977 dialogue that they could probably generate something pretty useful off of it now.
Yeah.
I think, so the point is the point of the tomato soup example is that's the idiot way to use GPT. Like you can type Python, you can ask for Python queries that do things. You can ask for bash scripts. You can ask for C+ that'll run in the Unreal Engine. You can ask for like the machines can write code. So presumably at some point somebody's going to be like, hey, what if we write code that makes the code that is running here better? And then we just keep doing that until they get better and better and better. Or maybe we revert more toward the mean. I don't know. It remains to be seen. It's the whole thing's messy. Google is apparently freaked out because people are starting to use GPT-2 instead of Google to find things on the internet since Google kind of sucks now.
Interesting.
And GPT-2 is possibly apocryphal, but generates more believable results.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're edging more toward more truthiness, Brad.
Dude, seriously. It's that whole thing of like, things are this way. No, they're not. Well, yeah. Doesn't it mean something that I thought they were? Like that, the whole thing. It's just like, hey, whatever feels good to believe is. Yeah.
Yeah. And presumably all of the big tech companies are also doing stuff here just quietly in the background because either they're behind or like you look at Google and they should have a corpus of data that's bigger than anybody else's in the world, probably. So it's all weird, man.
It sure is. Where things are at, say 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now.
Well, so the Moon Room had asked in the Discord if we could do a predictions on AI episode.
Dude, I don't even like,
and
that's really the kind of basis of my concern is that the number of different domains this keeps spreading into and seemingly disrupting, or getting close to disrupting, just keeps growing. Like
singularity.
Like what other categories could we see this deployed in? Like all of them?
Yeah, I think probably all of them.
Like, do they start relying on AI to make economic and political decisions and set policy?
I think we're probably already doing some of the economic decisions.
I'm sure.
There's a lot of the stock market stuff is all based on, machine learning stuff.
Yeah. And I assume there's a massive amount of machine learning and data science being used. So like some of that stuff is happening already, but I'm talking less like, hey, I'm going to use this tool to profile data more efficiently, and more I'm going to ask this thing what the inflation rate should be and trust it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would hope, one would hope that you would use this stuff for things that are like, a good place for this is to use it for image recognition on factory lines to find flawed parts and to scan x-rays to find, bubbles and stamped metal, cast metals and stuff like that. Right. Yeah. Like that's the thing that it should be able to do, and probably is going to be as reliable or like a supplement, a really great supplement to people. We're seeing, like, the bad example is that the dumbass who hooked up a Chat GPT to his person-to-person therapy app and did some human experimentation without consent, because he instead of connecting people to people for therapy, which is a established, valuable tool, he connected people to this ambiguously good chatbot, and didn't tell them they were talking to a machine. So like again, it's the concentration of the ability to do something stupid and bad in a relatively small number of hands. Like if that person had done that, if that person wanted to, have dogs do therapy, they would have had to first get 1,000 dogs. Right. And it's hard to get 1,000 dogs.
Dude, we should get 1,000 dogs. That sounds pretty awesome.
It's a lot of poop, Brad.
That's true. There are downsides.
Yeah.
Since we're real quick before we wrap, since we're talking predictions, this would require an extremely sound track record to trust. But like I could see this being useful in medical science and healthcare at some point. Yeah, specifically in the context of preventative medicine and kind of catching stuff early.
But if you can use it for that, then the insurance companies can use that to determine what your actuarial rate should be,
so
right?
Yes, everything has got a downside.
Yeah, but like I imagine that there's people doing like radiology work right now that are building software radiology assistants that will help radiologists do their jobs better.
That's the type of stuff I'm talking about.
Yeah,
could be beneficial.
I would like. As much as I don't like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, I do tend to agree that with the initial assertion of that Sam Altman and the people at OpenAI made, which is that this is a technology that could be a powerful force for good or a powerful force for evil, and it's on us to make sure that we make sure it's the former and not the latter.
I have bad news about all of history.
It's going to get cheaper and easier to do it. I mean, the one thing that we have going for us is the corpuses are really, really like they're expensive and time consuming to make, and training the models is hard and time consuming. The bad thing is I think the people who do it first will probably maintain the lead forever because you'll always be a generation or two ahead of everybody else. Sure. So anyway,
until that company's AI takes over and becomes Skynet, and then we're all done.
Yeah, I mean, look, some dipshit probably has a startup called Skynet Industries right now because,
yes, in a world where they named a surveillance company Palantir, yes, that absolutely is going to happen.
Yeah, and a food replacement Soylent. Like we're the stupids. The stupids are everywhere, man.
You know what? We have to wrap this up. You know what I always thought was an interesting thought experiment about Terminator and Skynet was like Skynet was just essentially a missile trajectory processing AI, right?
Yeah, it was a computer from War Games,
right?
Whopper.
So like how it got from that to being able to manufacture bipedal robots and stuff like that is really interesting. Like, how did it commandeer production lines? How did it retool production lines? Skynet does not have arms and legs. Man. That's what I'm saying. It's like, Skynet isn't a thing that walks around with, opposable thumbs. It can't manipulate things itself. Like, it's just fun to think about. Like, what were the many baby steps required to commandeer and retool production lines to start making actual robots?
Okay, here you want the biggest argument against self-driving cars ever. If you want to kill the most people as fast as possible, what you do if you're Skynet, not if you're me, obviously, if you're Skynet, is you take over the self-driving cars, because there'll be a bazillion of those around. Everybody will have them, and you just start smashing them into people, buildings, whatever. It's really grim.
Stephen King wrote that story like 40 years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, there's a guy named Daniel Suarez who wrote another one of those about 15 years ago, probably now.
This was not. This was a more of a supernatural. Oh God! All the vehicles have come to life and are killing us.
Oh, yeah. The Christine parable.
Yes, the trucks.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, 18-wheeler is terrifying. Anyway, you know what's not terrifying, Brad?
What's that?
Our wonderful patrons.
Oh, they're great.
As always, Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod is a 100% listener supported show, so we appreciate the generosity of all of our patrons. Thank you, patrons.
Thank you. Thank you. I said it 3 times. That's how you know it sticks.
I mean, yeah, they'll remember. You got to say it 3 times for people to remember anything. As always, we appreciate all of our patrons, but we especially appreciate our executive producer tier patrons. We thank every episode, including Nick Johnston, Paddle Creek Games, makers of Fractured Veil, Andrew Slosky, Octothorpe Bunny Crimes, Just Wedge, Joel Krauska, Twinkle Twinkie, David Allen, and James Kamek. Thank you all so much. We will be back next week with another edition of the Tech Pod.
Yeah, I hope people enjoyed this rambly episode. We were all over the place, and we're certainly not subject matter experts, but let us know.
I mean, it's a weird. It's hard. It seems like in order. You have to. It's complicated. This one's really complicated.
It is. It sure is.
There's a lot to it. There's a lot of implications to the technology and how it works and what it's going to mean for us. My prediction is that what is 5 years looks like is not going to be anything like what we expect it is right now.
Yeah. Yes. I think I would conclude by saying, are we in the singularity? Maybe not yet. Are we on our way there? Maybe.
I think my hunch is that we have a slow singularity coming, and we're probably already there. And also, probably it's not going to be as bad as we think if we're being pessimistic today, but it's not going to be as good as we think if we're being optimistic today.
So what you're saying is, if as long as we assume the absolute worst, then what we get will invariably be better.
Yeah, you say that, but then 2016 happened, and it turns out that was way worse than I expected it to be. So, yeah, I don't know. See you all next week. Bye, everybody.